A woman's life shatters when her baby is taken as debt payment, until a mafia boss decides to change everything. He storms into the scene expecting to punish his own men, but instead he sees a terrified mother reaching for her newborn. And in one moment, the most feared man in the city breaks every rule he's ever lived by. He gives the baby back, then takes the mother. He says it's protection. But the way he looks at her, it feels like something far more dangerous. Now the two of them are running for their lives, hunted by the mafia, hunted by the feds, hunted by the very people who stole her identity and tried to sell her child. And the woman starts to realize the darkest truth of all. This man didn't save her by accident. He's hiding something that could destroy them both. But if he's the only one who can keep her alive, what happens when the one man she fears becomes the only man she can trust? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Sarah's feet ached as she climbed the creaky stairs to her third-floor apartment, cradling 3-month-old Luna against her chest. The night shift at Eddie's Diner had been brutal. 12 hours of fake smiles and coffee refills while her mind constantly drifted to the mounting bills waiting at home. "Almost there, sweet girl," she whispered, pressing her lips to Luna's downy head. The baby stirred but didn't wake, her tiny fist curled against Sarah's uniform. The hallway's fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that made the peeling wallpaper look even more depressing. Sarah fumbled with her keys, trying not to jostle Luna as she unlocked the 3 deadbolts she'd installed after moving in. The apartment was small, barely 500 square feet, but it was all she could afford on her waitress salary. Sarah gently laid Luna in her second-hand crib, tucking a soft blanket around her. "Sweet dreams, my love." She watched her daughter's peaceful face for a moment, heart swelling with both love and worry. Luna was perfect, worth every sleepless night and double shift. But the financial reality of single motherhood was crushing her. A white envelope on the floor caught her eye. It must have been slipped under her door while she was at work. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it, already knowing what she'd find. The final notice was printed in bold red letters. "Payment required within 24 hours or legal action will be taken." "No, no, no," she whispered, sliding down the wall as tears blurred her vision. The medical bills from Luna's birth had spiraled out of control after complications required an emergency C-section. Her ex-boyfriend had disappeared the moment she told him she was pregnant, leaving her drowning in debt. Sarah allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to cry before wiping her eyes. She had to be strong for Luna. There had to be a way out of this mess. Hours later, while Sarah was settled in her threadbare armchair feeding Luna, a sharp crack split the air. Her front door burst open, wood splintering around the locks. 2 men in dark suits stormed in before she could even scream. "Time's up!" the taller one growled, his face hard and expressionless. Sarah clutched Luna tighter, scrambling to her feet. "Please, I just need more time." The shorter man lunged forward, shoving Sarah hard enough to make her stumble. Her hips slammed into the corner of the coffee table as Luna wailed in terror. "No!" Sarah screamed as the taller man wrenched her baby from her arms. She launched herself at him, clawing at his face, kicking wildly. "Give her back!" A backhand across her face sent her sprawling. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth as she pushed herself up on trembling arms, watching helplessly as they carried her screaming daughter away. "Outside! Now!" The shorter man grabbed her arm, dragging her down the stairs and out to the parking lot. They forced her into a metal folding chair, Luna's cries piercing the night air. "Boss is coming to collect personally," the taller one said, bouncing Luna roughly as she sobbed. "Guess he wants to see what all the fuss is about." Sarah's split lip trembled as she watched headlights sweep across the parking lot. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up, its engine purring to silence. The man who stepped out made her blood run cold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an immaculate black suit that screamed money and power. But it was his eyes that terrified her, dark, calculating, completely devoid of warmth. This was a man who killed without hesitation. "Boss, we got the collateral," the shorter man said proudly. "Figure the kid's worth more than what she owes." The temperature seemed to drop as the boss, Rafael Costa, Sarah would later learn, turned those deadly eyes on his men. "You took a baby." His voice was soft, controlled, but vibrating with barely contained rage. "Yeah, boss. Smart thinking, right?" The taller man grinned, still holding the crying Luna carelessly. In one fluid motion, Raphael crossed the space between them. "Give her to me, now." The man's grin faltered as he handed over Luna. Sarah watched in disbelief as Raphael cradled her daughter with surprising gentleness, supporting her head properly. Piccola, he murmured, his deep voice soothing. You're safe now. Luna's cries gradually quieted to hiccups as he swayed slightly, holding her close to his chest. Sarah couldn't reconcile this tender moment with the aura of lethal danger that surrounded him. Her heart pounded as those dark eyes fixed on her. Get in the car, he ordered, already moving toward the Mercedes with Luna. Please, Sarah struggled to her feet. Please, don't take my baby. I'm not separating you, Raphael said coldly. You're both coming with me. Your life just changed. Get in the car. Sarah's legs shook as she stumbled to the passenger, sighed, every instinct screaming danger. But Luna had stopped crying in Raphael's arms, and she had no choice but to follow where her daughter went. The leather seat was butter soft as she sank into it, watching Raphael carefully transfer Luna to her arms through the driver's side door. Her daughter snuggled against her chest, apparently soothed by the stranger's attention. Hold her tight, Raphael instructed as he slid behind the wheel. We have a long drive ahead. Sarah clutched Luna closer, breathing in her sweet baby scent. Her mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Where was he taking them? What did he want? How had her life spiraled so completely out of control in a single night? The Mercedes purred to life, its quiet luxury a stark contrast to the violence that had preceded it. As they pulled away from her apartment building, Sarah caught a glimpse of the two men still standing in the parking lot. Raphael's voice cut through her thoughts, hard as steel. Those men will never touch you or your daughter again, he said, hands tightening on the steering wheel. I don't hurt children, ever. Sarah shivered at the implication in his words, that he did hurt people, just not children. She looked down at Luna, now sleeping peacefully despite everything that had happened. Where are you taking us? She whispered, hating how her voice trembled. Raphael's eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, but something in his expression shifted. Somewhere safe. The debt collectors weren't the only ones looking for you. Your ex-boyfriend sold your information to some very dangerous people. Fresh terror gripped Sarah's heart. She thought of all the times she'd felt watched lately, the hang-up calls, the shadows that seemed to follow her home from work. What people? What do they want? That's what we're going to find out, Raphael answered grimly. But first, we need to disappear. The city lights blurred past as they drove into the night. Sarah's world had shattered and reformed in the space of an hour, leaving her with nothing but questions and fear. Yet somehow, despite his dangerous presence, she felt safer with Raphael than she had in months. Luna stirred in her arms, making tiny snuffling sounds in her sleep. Sarah pressed a kiss to her forehead, silently promising to protect her no matter what came next. She didn't trust Rafael Costa, couldn't trust a man who radiated such lethal capability. But for now, he was their only shield against whatever darkness her ex had unleashed. The Mercedes glided through empty streets as Sarah's old life disappeared in the rearview mirror. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a man who killed without remorse, yet held her baby with heartbreaking tenderness. There was no going back now. Her life had indeed changed, and she could only pray she was strong enough to survive whatever came next. Raphael drove in silence, his presence filling the car with unspoken tension. Every so often, his eyes would flick to the rearview mirror, checking for tails with the practiced ease of someone used to being hunted. Sarah found herself studying his profile in the passing streetlights. The sharp jaw, the slight shadow of stubble, the way his dark eyes seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Luna's warm weight against her chest was the only thing keeping her grounded as reality continued to shift beneath her feet. The night had become surreal, transforming from ordinary exhaustion to terror to this strange limbo, where a dangerous stranger had become their reluctant protector. The city gradually gave way to darker, less populated areas. Sarah tried to track their route, but soon lost her bearings as Raphael took a series of turns that seemed designed to confuse any followers. Her daughter slept on, completely unaware of how drastically their world had changed. The Mercedes glided through the city's empty streets, each passing streetlight casting stark shadows across Raphael's face. Sarah's hands trembled as she held Luna, who had started fussing again, her tiny whimpers filling the tense silence of the car. Your debt was sold illegally, Raphael said suddenly, his voice cutting through Luna's cries. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. The collectors who grabbed your daughter, they work for people who have no business involving children in their transactions. I won't allow it. Sarah clutched Luna closer, trying to soothe her. I don't understand. Why do you care? because there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. His dark eyes met hers briefly in the rearview mirror. Even in my world, there are rules. Children are off limits, always. Luna's cries grew louder, and Raphael pulled the car smoothly into a side street. She needs to be held differently, he said, surprising Sarah with his observation. He reached over, and before Sarah could protest, he had gently repositioned Luna in her arms, tucking the baby's head against her shoulder. Almost immediately, Luna's cries softened. "How did you?" Sarah began. "I've seen enough mothers and babies to know," he cut her off, his tone brooking no further questions. "Now listen carefully. You're under my protection, which means you do as I say, go where I tell you, and follow my rules without question. Your life depends on it. Do you understand?" Sarah wanted to argue, to demand more explanations, but the steel in his voice made her simply nod. They drove for another 30 minutes, taking complicated routes through increasingly isolated areas until they reached what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. Raphael pressed a button on his key fob, and a hidden gate slid open. The car descended into an underground garage where 3 men in dark suits stood waiting. Sarah recognized the efficient, dangerous way they moved, the same predatory grace Raphael possessed. As they stepped out of the car, Sarah caught fragments of their hurried conversation. "Apartment's been torched, boss. No trace left. Clean sweep of the building. All evidence eliminated." The words hit her like physical blows. "My apartment," she gasped, her voice rising with panic. "You burned down my home." Raphael's hand shot out, wrapping around her wrist. His grip was firm but careful, containing rather than hurting. "Listen to me," he said, pulling her closer. "Everything in that apartment can be replaced. Your life and Luna's cannot. You're safer here with me than anywhere else in the world right now." Tears burned in Sarah's eyes as the reality of her situation sank in. Everything she owned, every memory she'd collected, had been reduced to ashes. Luna stirred against her chest, and Sarah forced herself to steady her breathing. Her daughter needed her to be strong. Raphael led them through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. They emerged into what looked like a luxury penthouse, though Sarah quickly realized it was a fortress disguised as a home. "This is a safe house," Raphael explained, guiding them down a hallway. "You'll stay in here." He opened a door to reveal a spacious bedroom with an adjoining nursery. The furniture was expensive but practical, and a top-of-the-line security panel glowed softly on the wall. "My room is next door," he continued, pointing to another door within the suite. "The windows are bulletproof. There are motion sensors throughout the building, and my men guard the perimeter 24 hours a day." Sarah walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. The glass was indeed thick, and she could see armed men patrolling the grounds. "Am I a prisoner?" she asked quietly. "You're protected," Raphael corrected. "There's a difference." He showed her the basics: how to use the security system, where to find supplies for Luna, which channels to use on the radio system to reach him or his men. Everything was methodical, practiced, as if he'd done this before. As night settled over the safe house, Luna woke crying. Sarah paced the room, trying to comfort her when she felt eyes on her back. Raphael stood in the doorway, watching them with an unreadable expression. In the dim light, she caught something in his face, a flicker of regret perhaps, warring with stern resolve. "Try singing to her," he suggested softly, then disappeared before Sarah could respond. Sarah lay in bed hours later, Luna finally sleeping in the custom-made crib beside her. The sheets were silk, the mattress perfectly firm, every detail speaking of money and power. But all she could think about was how thoroughly trapped she was. The security system hummed quietly, a constant reminder of both protection and confinement. Through the wall, she could hear Raphael moving in his room, his footsteps steady and purposeful, even at this late hour. She thought about running, but where would she go? Her apartment was gone, her possessions destroyed, and somewhere out there, unknown dangers waited, dangers that had made even Raphael Costa take extreme measures. Luna sighed in her sleep, tiny fingers curling and uncurling. Sarah watched her daughter, marveling at how peaceful she looked, despite everything that had happened. The contrast was stark. This innocent baby, surrounded by the trappings of a world built on violence and power. From her bed, Sarah could see the city sprawling below, its lights twinkling like stars behind the bulletproof glass. The view was beautiful, but it only emphasized her isolation. She was in a gilded cage, held there by a man who killed without hesitation but handled her baby with gentle hands. The night stretched on, and Sarah remained awake, listening to the quiet movements of the guards outside, the soft whir of surveillance cameras, and Luna's peaceful breathing. Every sound, every shadow, reminded her of the truth she couldn't escape. She was now bound to Rafael Costa's world, for better or worse. A radio crackled somewhere in the distance, guards changing shifts, maintaining their vigilant perimeter. Sarah pulled the silk sheets closer, trying to find comfort in their luxury. But comfort was hard to come by when she knew that beyond these walls, her old life was literally going up in flames. The security panel cast a soft blue glow across the room, its steady light a constant reminder of her new reality. She thought about the way Rafael had looked at Luna, the gentleness that seemed at odds with everything else about him. There was more to him than the cold-blooded enforcer, but that only made him more dangerous, more unpredictable. Sarah closed her eyes, knowing sleep would be elusive. Her world had been completely upended in the space of a day, and now she lay in a stranger's safe house, protected and imprisoned by a man who dealt in death, but drew the line at harming children. The contradiction was dizzying. Luna stirred slightly, and Sarah reached out to touch her daughter's tiny hand through the crib slats. Whatever came next, she would face it for Luna's sake. She had no choice. Rafael Costa had made sure of that. The pounding on Sarah's door jolted her awake at 4:30 in the morning. Luna stirred, but thankfully didn't cry, as Rafael burst in, already fully dressed in dark clothes. "Get up! Pack only what you need for the baby. We're leaving in 5 minutes." His voice was tight with urgency. Sarah scrambled out of bed, her heart racing. What's happening? Those collectors talked. The syndicate knows about you now. Rafael was already gathering Luna's supplies, methodically checking each item before putting it in a bag. "They'll be watching my properties. We need to disappear." The silk sheets that had felt so luxurious last night now seemed like a distant dream as Sarah hurriedly changed into the clothes Rafael tossed her, plain jeans and a dark hoodie. She wrapped Luna in a warm blanket while Rafael packed diapers and formula with military precision. They left through a service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where cameras might catch them. The pre-dawn air was crisp and sharp in Sarah's lungs as they hurried across the parking garage. Rafael's expensive black car sat untouched, but he led them past it to a beat-up silver SUV with tinted windows. "Switch vehicles," he explained, helping her secure Luna's car seat. First rule of evasion. The car smelled of leather cleaner and gun oil. Sarah held Luna close as Rafael navigated through empty streets, taking random turns and doubling back occasionally. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting near what she assumed was a concealed weapon. Hours passed in tense silence. Luna dozed, waking only for feeds, while Sarah watched the landscape change from city to suburbs to rural highways. Rafael's eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. Around noon, they pulled into a rundown motel off the highway. The kind of place that asked no questions and kept no records. The parking lot was mostly empty, save for a few dusty trucks and old sedans. "Stay close to me," Rafael ordered, grabbing their bags. "Keep your head down and don't make eye contact with anyone." The room was small and dated, with faded wallpaper and worn carpet. Rafael immediately began a methodical sweep, checking windows, testing locks, examining vents. Sarah watched as he placed a gun under his pillow and another behind the television stand. "I need to shower," he announced after completing his inspection. "Don't open the door for anyone, not even if they claim to be management." The moment the bathroom door closed and water started running, Sarah's heart began to race. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance. She looked at Luna, peaceful in her carrier, and made a split-second decision. Moving as quietly as possible, she lifted Luna's carrier and crept to the bathroom window. It was small but big enough to squeeze through. The cool afternoon air hit her face as she carefully lowered herself to the ground, praying Luna wouldn't wake and cry. The woods behind the motel offered cover and possible escape routes. Sarah started walking quickly but carefully toward the tree line, trying to look casual in case anyone was watching. That's when she noticed them. Men who seemed too alert, too purposeful to be regular travelers. They were scanning the parking lot, studying every guest with predatory intensity. One of them turned in her direction, his hand moving beneath his jacket. Sarah's blood ran cold as he started walking toward her with measured steps. She froze, clutching Luna tighter, her mind blank with panic. Suddenly, strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Sarah nearly screamed until she recognized Rafael's cologne. He pulled her backward into the woods, his grip firm but not painful. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" he hissed in her ear, maneuvering them behind a large tree. The man who had been approaching continued past their hiding spot. Unaware they'd vanished into the tree line. Raphael spun Sarah around to face him, his dark eyes blazing with fury and something else. Fear? Do you understand how many people are hunting you right now? That man would have put a bullet in your head and taken Luna before you could even scream. Sarah trembled, both from the close call and from Raphael's intensity. Why are they after us? What did I do? It's not what you did, Raphael replied, taking Luna's carrier from her shaking hands. It's what your ex-boyfriend did. He sold your information to people who will use that baby as leverage against me, and I won't let that happen. He carried Luna back toward the motel room, leaving Sarah to follow on unsteady legs. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. This wasn't just about debt collectors or loan sharks. She had somehow become entangled in something much darker, much more dangerous. Inside the room, Raphael closed all the curtains and checked his weapons again. His hair was still wet from the interrupted shower, water droplets darkening his black t-shirt. The fury had faded from his expression, replaced by grim determination. You can't run from this, Sarah, he said quietly, checking Luna, who had somehow slept through everything. Not on your own. Those men out there, they're just the scouts. The real hunters haven't even arrived yet. Sarah sank onto the bed, her escape attempt feeling foolish now. How many people are looking for us? At least 3 different organizations, Raphael answered, his voice matter-of-fact. Your ex sold your information to multiple buyers. Each one thinks they can use Luna to control me. They don't care about collateral damage. The ancient air conditioner hummed in the background as Sarah processed this. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see more men arriving in the parking lot, moving with the same predatory awareness as the others. Why do they think Luna can control you? She asked, watching Raphael check his phone, his expression growing more concerned with each message. Because they know I have rules, he replied, moving to peer through the curtains. Lines I won't cross. Children are one of them. They think that makes me weak. He turned to look at her, his dark eyes intense. They're wrong. It makes me more dangerous. Luna stirred in her carrier, making small noises that suggested she'd wake soon for another feeding. Sarah watched as Raphael's expression softened slightly when he looked at the baby, then hardened again as he checked his phone. We'll stay until dark, he announced, sitting in a chair, positioned to watch both the door and windows. Then we move again. You need to trust me, Sarah. No more escape attempts. They'll only get you killed. Sarah nodded, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. Through the thin motel walls, she could hear cars pulling into the parking lot, doors opening and closing, footsteps passing their room. Each sound made her tense, wondering if it was friend or foe. Raphael remained vigilant, his body coiled with lethal readiness, even as he helped Sarah prepare Luna's bottle. The domestic task seemed at odds with the guns and danger, yet he handled it with the same precision he gave everything else. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the curtains, Sarah watched Raphael check his weapons again, coordinate with his contacts via coded text messages, and constantly monitor the activity outside. She realized that running had never really been an option. She was in too deep, caught in a web of violence and power she didn't understand. Luna woke fully then, demanding attention with her cries. As Sarah fed her, she caught Raphael watching them with that same unreadable expression she'd seen the night before. He was a killer, she had no doubts about that, but he was also their only chance at survival. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the threatening world beyond. Raphael's anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a weary resignation as he secured the locks. Luna stirred in her carrier, making soft whimpering sounds that echoed in the tense silence. Sit down, Raphael said, his voice gentler than before. You need to understand what we're dealing with. Sarah sank into the threadbare armchair, her legs still shaky from their confrontation outside. The ancient air conditioner rattled, pushing stale air through the room as Raphael paced, gathering his thoughts. Your ex-boyfriend, he began, jaw tightening. What was his addiction? Sarah blinked, surprised by the question. Gambling, mostly. Some cocaine. How did you— Because addicts are predictable, Raphael cut in. They'll sell anything, anyone, when they're desperate enough. He stopped pacing, fixing her with an intense stare. He sold your identity to a rival organization. Everything. Social security number, medical records, debt information, all of it. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Jake did what? He needed quick cash. My rivals were buying. Simple transaction for him. Raphael's voice was cold, clinical. But it started a chain reaction nobody expected. Your identity got used in a massive fraud operation. Now the FBI is investigating, which means they're looking for you too. Sarah's head spun. Her hands trembled as she reached for Luna, needing to hold her daughter close. "But I haven't done anything wrong." "No, you haven't, but trying to prove that while avoiding both federal agents and Mafia hitmen would be—" Raphael's lips twitched. Challenging. "And the debt collectors? The ones who took Luna?" Raphael's expression darkened. "After the fraud scheme, your information ended up in black market debt auctions. Multiple organizations bought pieces of what they thought was legitimate debt. They all want their money, or something of equal value." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as the magnitude of her situation became clear. "So everyone's after us? The FBI, the Mafia, debt collectors. All because of Jake?" "Yes." Raphael moved closer, awkwardly hovering as she began to cry in earnest. "But they'll have to go through me first." Luna started fussing more insistently, picking up on her mother's distress. Sarah tried to calm her, but her hands were shaking too badly to properly hold the bottle. Without a word, Raphael took the baby from her arms. "I've got her," he said quietly. "Take a moment, breathe." Sarah watched through tear-blurred vision as this dangerous man, this killer, carefully cradled her daughter. He moved to the kitchenette, testing the formula temperature on his wrist with the precision of someone who'd done it before. "You seem experienced with babies," she observed, wiping her eyes. Something flickered across Raphael's face. Pain, maybe, or memory. "I made a vow long ago," he said, settling into the other chair with Luna. "No child should ever suffer for their parents' mistakes or debts. Not ever." The bottle nipple brushed Luna's lips, and she latched on eagerly, tiny hands curling against the plastic. Raphael held her with surprising gentleness, his deadly hands perfectly steady as they supported her head. "Is that why you gave her back?" Sarah asked. "When those men brought us to you, you could have used her as leverage like everyone else wants to." Raphael was quiet for a long moment, watching Luna drink. The setting sun painted amber stripes across the room through gaps in the curtains, softening his hard edges. "I won't be the man who hurts a baby," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "I refuse." There was weight behind those words, history Sarah couldn't begin to guess at. But she saw truth in the careful way he held Luna, in how his thumb unconsciously stroked the baby's cheek as she drank. The formula slowly disappeared as silence settled over the room. Luna's eyes grew heavy, her sucking slowing until she dozed off. Raphael continued holding her, lost in thought as the light faded outside. Sarah felt her own exhaustion creeping in, the emotional toll of the day catching up. She curled up on the bed, watching through heavy lids as Raphael finally laid Luna in her carrier. He moved with the same lethal grace as always, but tempered now, gentle. "Sleep," he told Sarah, settling into the chair nearest the door. "I'll keep watch." She wanted to protest, to ask more questions, but fatigue won out. The last thing she saw before drifting off was Raphael in the growing darkness, gun resting on his thigh, eyes alert as he guarded them through the night. In her sleep, Sarah clutched Luna closer, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt something close to safe. Outside, cars continued passing on the highway, their headlights sweeping across the ceiling. Each time, Raphael's hand tightened slightly on his weapon, ready to defend his charges against whatever threats might come. The night deepened. Luna slept peacefully, unaware of the dangerous men searching for her, or of the equally dangerous man protecting her. Sarah's breathing evened out as exhaustion pulled her under completely. Raphael remained vigilant, his dark eyes reflecting occasional glints of light from passing cars. He checked his phone periodically, reading encrypted messages from his network of contacts. Each update confirmed his fears. More players were joining the hunt, drawn by the chance to gain leverage over him. His jaw clenched as he deleted another warning about a rival organization mobilizing resources. Let them come, he thought, watching Sarah and Luna sleep. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Some innocents deserve protection, no matter the cost. He had failed once before, long ago. He wouldn't fail again. The air conditioner hummed, masking the sounds of footsteps in the parking lot as another group of hunters arrived, searching room by room. Raphael's finger rested lightly on his weapon's trigger guard, ready. In her sleep, Luna made a tiny sound, and his expression softened momentarily before hardening again as he scanned the windows. Hours passed. Sarah stirred occasionally, distressed murmurs escaping as she dreamed. Each time, Raphael watched her until she settled, then resumed his vigilant observation of their surroundings. The weight of his promise pressed down on him, not just to protect them tonight, but to keep them safe until this tangled web of threats could be eliminated. Dawn was still hours away. Raphael shifted slightly, adjusting his position without sacrificing his readiness to react. His phone vibrated again. Another update. Another threat to assess. Through it all, mother and daughter slept on, unaware of the deadly dance playing out around them. The night grew deeper. Raphael kept his watch, gun ready, senses alert, determined that no harm would come to the innocent lives in his care. Sometimes, even in his dark world, there had to be lines that couldn't be crossed. Sometimes protection had to matter more than power. Luna sighed in her sleep, tiny fingers curling. Sarah unconsciously pulled her closer, mother's instinct strong, even in slumber. Raphael watched them both, his expression unreadable in the darkness. He had chosen his side in this conflict. Now he would see it through, no matter the cost. The morning sun cast long shadows across the motel parking lot as Raphael methodically loaded their meager belongings into the SUV. Sarah watched from the doorway, Luna cradled against her chest as he performed a final sweep of the room, checking for anything that might trace back to them. "We need to move," he said, voice clipped. "The longer we stay in one place, the more dangerous it gets." Sarah's arms tightened around Luna. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere remote. I have a safe house in the countryside." Raphael took Luna's diaper bag, his movements efficient and practiced. "It's secure, off the grid." As they pulled out of the parking lot, Sarah stared at the motel, shrinking in the rearview mirror. Another piece of her old life falling away. The SUV's engine rumbled steadily as they merged onto the highway, headed deeper into rural territory. "Listen," she said, after several miles of silence. "I've been thinking. I have a friend in Oregon who could—" "No." Raphael's response was immediate, final. "You don't understand. She lives completely off the grid, grows her own food." I said no. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Your friend can't protect you from what's coming." "But if I left the state, changed my name?" Raphael cut her off with a sharp laugh that held no humor. "If you step out of my shadow, you're dead in an hour." He glanced at her, his dark eyes serious. "The people hunting you don't play games, Sarah. They have resources you can't imagine." Luna stirred in her car seat, making soft noises. Sarah reached back to adjust her blanket, buying time to steady her voice. "You make it sound like I'm some kind of high-value target. I'm nobody, just a waitress with bad debt." "You're leverage now," Raphael explained. "Against me, against the organizations fighting over your debt, even against the feds who think you're part of something bigger." He checked the mirrors, a constant habit. "Everyone wants a piece of you." The miles rolled by as Sarah absorbed this. Fields and forests replaced urban sprawl, the landscape growing wilder. After 2 hours, Luna started fussing, hungry and needing a change. "There's a gas station ahead," Raphael said, already signaling to exit. "We'll make it quick." The station sat alone at the crossroads, its faded sign creaking in the wind. Raphael parked near the restrooms, positioning the SUV for a fast exit. "I'll get supplies. Change her inside the car." Sarah nodded, grateful for the chance to stretch her legs. She had just finished changing Luna when movement near the store caught her eye. 2 men in dark suits were showing something to the cashier, a photo. Her heart stopped as she recognized her own driver's license photo being held up. Federal agents. They were everywhere. Sarah ducked behind the SUV, praying they hadn't seen her. Luna squirmed in her arms, threatening to cry. "Shh, baby, please," she whispered, bouncing gently. "Please be quiet." Footsteps crunched on gravel, getting closer. "Excuse me, ma'am." Sarah froze. The voice was professional, authoritative. She couldn't breathe. Suddenly, Raphael was there, materializing like a shadow. His hand closed around her arm, firm but not rough, as he guided her into the passenger seat. "Don't look back," he ordered, sliding behind the wheel. "Keep your head down." The engine roared to life. Sarah clutched Luna tighter as they pulled away, resisting the urge to check if they were being followed. Raphael drove normally, maintaining speed, taking turns that seemed random, but she suspected were carefully planned. "They had my picture," she whispered after several minutes. "They're really looking for me." "Now you understand?" Raphael's voice was grim. "This isn't just about debt collectors or local cops. The entire system is hunting you." Sarah watched the countryside blur past her window, reality finally sinking in. Her apartment was ashes, her job was gone, her identity was toxic. Even the law wasn't on her side anymore. "I can't go back, can I?" The words came out small, defeated. Raphael checked the mirrors one more time before answering. "No, not ever." Luna cooed from the back seat, oblivious to how her world had changed. Sarah reached back to touch her tiny hand, drawing strength from her daughter's innocent warmth. They drove on in silence, the SUV eating up miles of empty road. Raphael maintained a steady speed, nothing that would draw attention. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, checking mirrors, watching for tails. Sarah found herself studying his profile, trying to understand this dangerous man who had become her only protection. His jaw was set, expression unreadable, but she caught glimpses of tension in the way he held himself. Whatever game they were caught in, even he felt its weight. "How much further?" she asked after another hour passed. 3 more hours, maybe 4. Raphael adjusted their course slightly. "We'll take back roads, avoid cameras. The safe house is remote enough that nobody stumbles across it by accident." The implications of that settled heavily in Sarah's stomach. Remote meant isolated. Isolated meant dependent on Raphael for everything. Food, supplies, protection. She thought of Luna, of all the things a baby needed. As if reading her mind, Raphael spoke again. "I've arranged everything. The house is stocked, secure. Luna will have what she needs." He paused, then added, "You both will." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. The reality of their situation was still sinking in. Every mile took them further from her old life, deeper into Raphael's world of shadows and survival. The landscape grew increasingly rural. Small towns gave way to scattered farms, then to wilderness. Raphael turned onto progressively smaller roads, some little more than dirt tracks. The SUV suspension worked harder, handling the rough terrain. Luna had fallen asleep, her gentle breathing a counterpoint to the engine's rumble. Sarah found herself drifting too, exhaustion and emotional drain taking their toll. She fought to stay alert, to memorize their route, but the winding paths blurred together. Raphael drove with the same focused intensity he brought to everything. His hands were steady on the wheel, his movements precise. Occasionally he would slow, taking detours that seemed random but clearly served some strategic purpose. "Try to rest," he said, noticing her struggle to stay awake. "We're as safe as we can be right now," Sarah wanted to argue, to maintain some illusion of control, but her body betrayed her. Her eyes grew heavy as the motion of the vehicle lulled her. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Raphael's reflection in the windshield. His, dark eyes constantly watching, guarding, protecting. She dreamed of her old apartment, of normal days when her biggest worry was making rent. In the dream, she heard Luna crying but couldn't find her. She ran through endless rooms, following the sound until Raphael's voice cut through, waking her. "We're here." Sarah blinked, disoriented. The sun had moved significantly across the sky. They were parked in front of a rustic cabin, set back among thick trees. No other buildings were visible. This was it, she realized. Their sanctuary and their prison. The place where her old life officially ended, and whatever this new existence was began. Luna stirred, ready for another feeding. Sarah gathered her close, finding comfort in her daughter's warm weight. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And whether she liked it or not, they would face it under Raphael's protection. The world she knew was gone. There was only forward now, into this new reality where danger lurked at every turn, and her only shield was a man who killed as easily as he breathed. A man who, for reasons she still didn't fully understand, had decided they were worth protecting. The mountain safe house emerged from the trees as dusk approached, its weathered logs and stone chimney blending naturally into the landscape. Raphael parked the SUV close to the front door, his eyes scanning the perimeter before he killed the engine. "Home, sweet home," he muttered, though his tone suggested this was anything but sweet. "For now, at least." Sarah climbed out, cradling Luna against her chest. The mountain air bit at her exposed skin, crisp and clean compared to the city smog she was used to. Pine needles crunched under her feet as she followed Raphael to the entrance. He unlocked 3 separate deadbolts before pushing the door open. "After you," he said, one hand hovering near the small of her back but not quite touching. The interior was rustic but welcoming. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, with worn but comfortable furniture arranged around it. The kitchen, though small, looked functional, with its basic appliances and wooden countertops. A narrow hallway led to what Sarah assumed was the bedroom and bathroom. "There's only one bedroom," Raphael explained, setting down their bags. "You and Luna take it. I'll sleep out here." Sarah wanted to protest. It seemed wrong to take the only proper bed, but exhaustion won out. Luna was getting fussy, overdue for a feeding and change. "Bathroom's down the hall," Raphael continued. "Hot water works, but don't take too long. We need to conserve the tank." He moved through the space with familiar efficiency, checking windows and testing locks. Sarah watched him work while settling onto the worn couch, positioning Luna for nursing. "I'll make a supply run tomorrow," he said, pulling curtains closed. "Basic groceries, more diapers. Anything specific you need?" Sarah shook her head, too tired to think beyond the immediate moment. Luna latched and began feeding, her tiny fingers flexing against Sarah's skin. The next morning established their new routine. Sarah woke to find Raphael already up, coffee brewing in the ancient percolator. He'd been outside, dew dampening his boots, checking the property's perimeter. "Sleep okay?" he asked, pouring her a cup without waiting for an answer. Sarah nodded, accepting the coffee gratefully. Luna was still asleep in the portable bassinet Raphael had somehow acquired during their journey. As promised, Raphael left for supplies after breakfast, leaving Sarah with strict instructions to stay inside and away from windows. She used the time to explore their temporary home more thoroughly. The bedroom was simple but comfortable, a queen-sized bed with clean linens, a sturdy dresser, and blackout curtains on the windows. The bathroom was dated but functional, with a clawfoot tub that had seen better days. When Raphael returned, his arms full of groceries and baby supplies, Sarah felt an unexpected surge of relief. Being alone in the safe house had made her nervous, jumping at every creak and rustle. They fell into a pattern over the next day. Sarah took charge of meals, grateful for the distraction of normal tasks. Raphael worked continuously on reinforcing their security, checking sightlines, testing communications, maintaining escape routes. The forced proximity created moments of unexpected intimacy. That afternoon, Sarah rounded a corner to find Raphael shirtless, repairing a loose doorframe. Sweat gleamed on his shoulders, highlighting the muscled planes of his back and the intricate tattoos that covered much of his skin. She retreated quickly, cheeks burning, but the image stayed with her. Later, Raphael found Sarah napping on the couch, Luna sleeping peacefully on her chest. He paused in his security rounds, struck by how vulnerable they looked. Without thinking, he draped a blanket over them both, his calloused fingers ghosting over Luna's dark curls. The baby, surprisingly, seemed to take to Raphael. His deep voice soothed her when she was fussy, and she watched him with curious eyes whenever he moved through the room. Sarah caught him talking to Luna sometimes, when he thought she wasn't listening, his usual harsh tone softening to something almost gentle. Evening found them in the kitchen, Sarah washing dishes while Raphael cleaned his weapons at the table. The domestic scene felt surreal, a wanted woman and a dangerous man playing house, while death lurked outside their doors. "Those tattoos," Sarah ventured, glancing at the marks visible beneath his rolled-up sleeves. "Do they mean something?" Raphael's expression shuddered immediately, his hands stilled on the gun he was reassembling. "They're not up for discussion," he said flatly, ending the conversation. Sarah turned back to the dishes, face hot with embarrassment. She'd clearly stumbled onto forbidden territory. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unasked questions. That night, Sarah dreamed of running. In her dream, she was free. No debts, no hunters, no complicated feelings about dangerous men with kind hands. She woke with a start, disoriented in the unfamiliar bedroom. Luna's absence registered immediately, sending panic shooting through her chest. She scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, only to freeze in the doorway at the sight before her. Raphael lay stretched out on the couch, one arm tucked behind his head. On his broad chest, Luna slept peacefully, her tiny form rising and falling with his steady breathing. His free hand rested protectively on her back, keeping her secure. Sarah stood there, unable to look away. The moonlight filtering through the curtains softened Raphael's hard features, making him look younger, almost peaceful. This was a different man than the one who killed without hesitation, who lived in a world of violence and shadow. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in her chest, an emotion she wasn't ready to name. She watched them sleep, this unlikely pair, and felt the first tremors of her carefully maintained walls beginning to crack. Luna shifted slightly, and Raphael's hand moved automatically to soothe her, even in sleep. The tenderness of the gesture made Sarah's throat tight. This man, who had upended her entire existence, who represented everything dangerous and uncertain in her new reality, had somehow become Luna's protector. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, hiding secrets and sheltering possibilities. Sarah hugged herself, fighting the urge to move closer, to touch, to understand. Instead, she retreated silently to her borrowed bedroom, leaving father and daughter, no protector in charge, to their peaceful moment. But sleep proved elusive. Sarah lay awake, her mind replaying the image of Raphael and Luna, wondering how someone so lethal could be so gentle. The contradiction pulled at her, demanding attention she couldn't afford to give. Outside, the mountain winds whispered through pine needles. Inside, 3 hearts beat in uncertain rhythm. One innocent, one hardened, and one increasingly conflicted. Sarah pressed her face into the pillow, trying to smother the warmth spreading through her chest. She couldn't afford to feel this way. Not about him, not now, not ever. But in the quiet darkness of the safe house, her heart wasn't listening to reason. The mountain sunrise painted the safe house windows in soft gold when Raphael's burner phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the encrypted message, fingers tightening around the device. "Pack quickly," he ordered Sarah, already moving to gather their sparse belongings. "Marco says we have a clear route south." Sarah hurried to collect Luna's things, watching Raphael's methodical movements. He seemed more tense than usual, his shoulders rigid as he loaded their bags into the SUV's trunk. Luna fussed in her carrier, picking up on the nervous energy. "Who's Marco?" Sarah asked, securing Luna in the back seat. "My lieutenant, one of the few I trusted." Raphael's jaw clenched on the word trusted, but he didn't elaborate. "We need to move fast." They drove down winding mountain roads, the early morning fog clinging to the trees. Raphael kept checking the rearview mirror, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Something in his demeanor made Sarah's skin prickle with unease. 20 minutes into their journey, Raphael suddenly slowed, his dark eyes narrowing. "Something's wrong," he muttered, more to himself than Sarah. "What do you mean?" Sarah twisted in her seat, scanning the empty road behind them. Instead of answering, Raphael made a sharp turn onto a narrow dirt track, sending them bouncing through dense forest. The sudden change in direction made Luna whimper. "Raphael, what?" The back window exploded inward, showering them with safety glass. Sarah screamed, instinctively throwing herself over Luna's carrier. The crack of gunfire split the morning silence. "Get down!" Raphael shouted, swerving violently as bullets peppered the SUV's side. In the rearview mirror, a black vehicle emerged from the fog like a predator, gaining ground. Raphael drove like a man possessed, crashing through undergrowth and sliding around trees. The SUV's frame groaned in protest as branches whipped against the metal. Luna was crying now, her wails mixing with the sound of pursuit and gunfire. "Hold on!" Raphael yanked the wheel hard, sending them fishtailing down a steep embankment. Sarah's stomach lurched as they half slid, half crashed through the forest. Behind them, their pursuer's vehicle struggled with the terrain, falling behind. A weathered cabin materialized through the trees. Raphael brought the SUV to a skidding stop behind it, concealed from the road above. He was out of the car before the engine died, yanking open Sarah's door. "Take Luna and get inside," he commanded, pressing a key into her trembling hand. "There's a cellar. Lock yourselves in and don't come out until I call for you." "But now!" His voice was steel, brooking no argument. He pulled a second gun from beneath his seat, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. Sarah scrambled out, clutching Luna's carrier. The baby's cries echoed in the morning air as Sarah ran for the cabin door. Behind her, she heard engines approaching, the crunch of tires on loose stone. The cabin's interior was musty and dark. Sarah found the cellar entrance beneath a threadbare rug, her shaking hand struggling with the key. Luna's sobs had quieted to hiccups, her tiny fingers curled around Sarah's thumb. Above, the first shots rang out. Sarah flinched, holding Luna closer as she huddled in the cellar's shadows. The gunfight intensified. Sharp cracks of return fire, the meaty thud of bullets finding flesh, cursing in multiple languages. A body hit the ground hard enough to shake dust from the cellar ceiling. Someone screamed in pain, cut off abruptly. Sarah counted the shots, each one, making her jump. Through it all, Raphael moved with lethal grace. She could hear him repositioning, drawing their attackers into fatal mistakes. More gunfire. A window shattered. Someone begged for mercy in rapid Italian. A single shot answered their plea. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah held her breath, straining to hear movement above. Footsteps approached the cabin, heavy and deliberate. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, one hand covering Luna's mouth. "Sarah!" Raphael's voice, rough with exertion. "It's clear." She waited until he repeated the agreed-upon safety phrase before emerging from the cellar. The sight that greeted her made her gasp. Raphael stood in the cabin's main room, illuminated by streams of dusty sunlight. Blood spattered his clothes and face, none of it apparently his own. His chest heaved with exertion, guns still gripped in both hands. The cold fury in his eyes made him look barely human. Outside, through the broken window, Sarah glimpsed bodies scattered across the forest floor. She counted 5 of them, all heavily armed, all very dead. "Raphael!" She approached cautiously, Luna quiet against her chest. "What happened? Who were they?" He turned to her, and something in his expression shifted. The predator receding, leaving behind a man shaking with rage and betrayal. Marco, he spat the name like poison. He sold us out, tried to hand us over to the syndicate. You're lieutenant, but why? Raphael's laugh was bitter. Power, money, the syndicate wants me dead now too. He ran a blood-stained hand through his hair. I trusted him. For years I trusted that snake. Sarah watched him pace, the tension rolling off him in waves. This was a man who'd just killed 5 armed attackers without hesitation, yet his hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. We need to move, he said, already dialing. I have other contacts, ones Marco doesn't know about, but first... He broke off, listening to whoever had answered. His expression hardened further. Check again. I want confirmation of who else is compromised. Sarah sank into a dusty chair, the adrenaline crash leaving her dizzy. Luna stirred against her, remarkably calm given the chaos they'd just survived. The morning sun continued to rise, indifferent to the violence it illuminated. Raphael ended his call and moved to check the windows, his movements precise despite his obvious anger. The SUV's shot to hell. We'll need another vehicle. How many more will come after us? Sarah asked quietly. He turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw real fear beneath his controlled exterior. The syndicate doesn't leave loose ends. They'll keep coming until we're dead, or they are. Because of Marco's betrayal? Because I chose to protect you and Luna instead of following orders. His voice was tight with suppressed emotion. Because I refused to be the monster they wanted, and now they'll make an example of all of us. Sarah looked down at Luna, sleeping, peacefully, despite everything. This tiny life had somehow become the catalyst for upending a dangerous man's entire world. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on her chest. Raphael moved to stand before them, his presence both threatening and protective. Blood was drying on his knuckles where he gripped his gun. I won't let them hurt either of you, he said, the words ground out between clenched teeth. Marco's betrayal signed his death warrant. But first, we need to disappear. The morning light caught his face, highlighting the savage determination in his features. In that moment, Sarah understood the true cost of his protection, not just to her, but to him. He'd sacrificed everything he'd built, all his power and security, for a woman and child he barely knew. I'm sorry, she whispered, though she wasn't sure what exactly she was apologizing for. His expression softened fractionally. Don't be, I made my choice. He checked his watch, already planning their next move. We have maybe an hour before they realize something went wrong. I need to make some calls, call in favors from people I trust. Real trust, not the kind Marco pretended at. Sarah nodded, watching him move through the cabin with controlled urgency. Outside, birds had begun singing again. Nature reclaiming the space violence had briefly interrupted. The bodies would need to be dealt with, the SUV hidden, their tracks covered. This was their life now, running, hiding, surviving. And somewhere out there, a betrayer named Marco was plotting their deaths, backed by the full power of a syndicate that wanted revenge. Sarah held Luna closer, feeling the baby's steady heartbeat against her chest. They were bound now, the 3 of them, by blood and betrayal and something else she couldn't quite name. Something that made a brutal man choose mercy and a desperate woman trust a killer. The morning stretched ahead, full of uncertainty and danger, but as Sarah watched Raphael secure their temporary sanctuary, she realized that fear wasn't the only emotion making her heart race. The headlights cut through midnight darkness as Raphael guided their stolen truck down an overgrown path. Sarah cradled Luna, who slept soundly despite the bumpy ride. After another mile of dense forest, a small cabin emerged, weathered but solid. It's off-grid, Raphael explained, scanning the perimeter before letting them inside. No one knows about this place. The cabin was basic but clean. One room with a kitchenette, a bed in the corner, and a worn couch. Sarah laid Luna in a makeshift crib, fashioned from blankets, while Raphael secured the doors and windows. When he finally sat down, Sarah noticed him wincing. You're hurt, she said, moving closer. Blood had soaked through his shirt where a bullet had grazed him during the firefight. It's nothing, he muttered, but Sarah was already tearing an old sheet into strips. Take off your shirt, she ordered softly. To her surprise, he complied without argument. Her hands trembled as she cleaned the wound. Their faces were inches apart. She could feel his breath on her cheek. The candlelight cast shadows across his scarred chest, each mark telling its own violent story. I should have protected you better, Raphael said suddenly, his voice rough. Should have known Marco would betray us. Sarah's fingers stilled on his skin. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his jaw, feeling the stubble beneath her fingertips. His eyes darkened at the contact, and for a moment, neither moved. Luna's soft coo broke the spell. Sarah pulled back, cheeks flushing as she finished bandaging him. The next day brought an odd domesticity to their hiding place. Sarah showed Raphael how to change Luna's diaper, trying not to laugh at his obvious discomfort. "You're doing it wrong," she said, guiding his hands. "Like this." "I've dismantled bombs easier than this," he grumbled, making Sarah burst out laughing. The sound seemed to startle him, and his lips curved into a rare smile. They cooked together that evening, Raphael chopping vegetables while Sarah heated formula for Luna. He moved with the same precision he used with weapons, but there was something softer in his movements now. "Where did you learn to cook?" Sarah asked, watching him stir a pot of soup. "My mother," he answered, then fell silent, clearly unwilling to share more. But the fact that he'd answered at all felt like progress. Night brought a fierce thunderstorm. Rain lashed the windows as lightning split the sky. Sarah jolted awake from a nightmare, her heart racing. In her dream, Marco's men had found them, had taken Luna while she screamed helplessly. Raphael sat by the door, gun across his lap, a dark sentinel against the storm. Without speaking, Sarah moved to sit beside him, still trembling from the nightmare. He studied her face in the darkness. "Bad dream?" She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Another crack of thunder made her jump. Before she could protest, Raphael pulled her into his lap, one arm wrapping around her waist while the other kept hold of his gun. "You're safe," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you." Heat bloomed where their bodies touched. Sarah found herself turning toward him, drawn by something she couldn't name. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Their breath mingled in the darkness. Sarah's heart hammered as Raphael leaned closer, his lips a whisper away from hers. The storm raged outside, but in that moment all she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears. Then Luna whimpered in her sleep, and Raphael jerked back as if burned. He lifted Sarah off his lap and stood, moving to check the windows with mechanical precision. "Try to get some sleep," he said, his voice strained. "We move again at dawn." Sarah returned to the bed, but sleep eluded her. Across the room, she could see Raphael's silhouette, rigid with tension as he kept watch. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and unfulfilled desires. Lightning illuminated the cabin in brief, bright flashes, each one revealing what they were trying to hide. The way Sarah's eyes lingered on Raphael's form, the way his hands clenched when he heard her shift in bed. Both lay awake, trapped not just by the storm, but by the growing hunger neither dared acknowledge. Sarah watched Raphael feeding Luna her morning bottle, his large hands impossibly gentle. "Why do you hate when children get caught up in all this?" she asked softly. Raphael's jaw tightened. After a long silence, he spoke. "I grew up in the Rio favelas. We were poor but happy, until the collectors came." His voice roughened. "My sister Maria was only 6. They took her to force my father to pay. We never saw her again." He explained how he joined the syndicate afterward, becoming what he feared to protect what remained of his family. "I became a monster," he admitted. "But I swore no child would suffer that fate on my watch." Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks as Luna reached for Raphael during lunch. He lifted her naturally, cradling her close. Later, searching for diapers, Sarah discovered a locked metal briefcase hidden behind boxes. Suspicion bloomed in her chest. That evening, she sat by the crackling fire, studying Raphael's face in the flames, wondering what secrets that briefcase held. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the screwdriver. With Raphael's rhythmic chopping echoing from outside, she cracked open the briefcase. Her heart stopped. Inside lay FBI documents with her name splashed across them, photos of her, financial records, and a negotiation proposal. Raphael had considered trading her identity to buy his freedom from the syndicate. Bile rose in her throat. She'd trusted him, let him close to Luna. Fighting tears, Sarah stuffed diapers and formula into a bag, scooped up Luna, and fled into the dense forest. Raphael returned to find the cabin empty, the broken briefcase telling him everything. Sarah pushed through branches, thorns scratching her arms until she reached a dirt road. Suddenly, black SUVs surrounded her. Men from the rival clan emerged, yanking Luna from her arms. Raphael burst through the trees, gun raised. A shot cracked through the air. He clutched his bleeding shoulder, falling to his knees as the cars peeled away, taking Sarah and Luna with them. Raphael jolted awake on the cabin floor, his shoulder throbbing and shirt crusty with dried blood. Rage coursed through his veins as he stumbled to the medical kit. Gritting his teeth, he stitched his own wound, each stab of the needle fueling his fury. He armed himself methodically, pistols, knives, grenades. His hands flew across burner phones, calling in favors from old contacts who owed him. Within an hour, he had a location, an industrial compound 10 miles outside the city. En route, Raphael caught a scout trailing him. The man's screams echoed through abandoned warehouses until he revealed where Sarah and Luna were held. As darkness fell, Raphael approached the compound like a shadow. He cut power lines and picked off perimeter guards one by one. When alarms finally blared, he unleashed hell, gunfire and explosions lighting up the night. Sarah yanked against her restraints, hearing the chaos drawing closer. The storage room door exploded inward. Through the smoke stepped Raphael, blood-streaked but determined. Raphael lunged forward, slicing through Sarah's restraints with his knife. "Luna!" she gasped. "Second floor office!" He moved like a predator through the compound, Sarah close behind. The last guard stood between them and Luna's cries. Raphael didn't hesitate. One precise shot, and the man crumpled. Luna wailed in a makeshift crib, but quieted instantly in Sarah's arms. They fled through smoke-filled corridors to Raphael's waiting car. He drove through the night, knuckles white on the steering wheel, until they reached a secluded cabin overlooking the ocean. As dawn painted the sky pink, Raphael gently cleaned Sarah's cuts and bruises. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice rough, "for everything. The secrets, the lies." "Why risk it all for us?" Sarah asked. Raphael's dark eyes met hers. "Because I love you both. Luna, she's my second chance. You're everything I never deserved, but desperately want." Sarah touched his face. "I'm done running from you." Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.